We bought this blue van, like it's like a minivan. We built a booth in the back, picked shows all over the place, Calgary, Ontario, then the States, California, and on Oregon and Washington, and just drove our van like all over the place, just slinging panties out of the back of the van essentially. And I like to point out, we set a goal of $100,000. We actually did $162,000 that year, which was like pretty awesome.
You're listening to Customer Growth Sessions presented by Intergrowth, where we talk through strategies to help up-and-coming e-commerce businesses bring in more customers. I'm your host, Pat Ahern. Let's jump in.
All right, listeners, welcome back to the latest episode of Customer Growth Sessions. Today, I'm thrilled to have on Mayo Santos, the CRO and co-founder over at Revol Cares. Mayo, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Obviously super excited to be part of this and just kind of share the story.
Absolutely. We're excited to have you here. So tell me about the early days of generating sales and really building up the business. What did those early sales look like? Where were they coming from?
Yeah. So really like way back when, it started off with Sarah herself. A few months later, we met. And so I really was excited about the fact that she was like this young woman starting her own business, her own thing. And that was always really like exciting to me. I really connected with the fact that she started her own business, and me being in sales, I was always like, at some point I'll either do it myself or I'll be part of a company, like early stages and that kind of thing. And the fact that it was periods, I also really related heavily to that because my mom and my cousins never really had a really easy time with their periods. In-person markets, trade shows, like small trade shows, small like farmers markets, those kinds of things. A lot of people go to those. And she at the time was like, yeah, that would be great. Like it costs $200 or whatever, $250 to sign up for the show. And so it's kind of low risk, right? So in January 2017 was really when she launched it, decided that she was going to start this thing on the side and try and grow this idea, because initially she was just trying to make it for herself. And the reason why she was inspired to push this and launch this and make this a thing in the first place was she was in her last year of university. She was challenged with her thesis to create something that was a new thing, that was a solution to a problem with technical fashion and design. And so that's usually what all the fourth years are really focused on when it comes to, when for kind of wrapping up their degree. And for her, it was like, well, I have this problem with periods and there's nothing that really can solve that issue. So I'll just make something. So she started down that journey, and then she was like, well, if there's enough of a demand behind it, maybe it can grow past just university, right? So from there, what she really did was after she left university, really focused on digging deeper into it. And for her, it was, I'll sign up for the farmers market it cost $200 or whatever it was. So all of that was really in January, February, March kind of time. And then in October, which is when we met, she told me about this whole thing. We actually ended up meeting on Tinder. Our first date was at a breakfast for Denny's. We talked about the fact that I have like my sales background and all that. And then she's like trying to grow this company. And it really struck a chord with me because growing up, I saw my mom and my cousins struggle with their periods as well. My mom had fibroids, ended up just having to get a hysterectomy. So it's like I saw the pain and the struggle. So I really like personally understood the idea of finding a period product that really works for people. And so I was obviously I was excited. So naturally for me, loving sales, I was like, hey, can I come to one of these shows with you? And I would see her just kind of stand there and like smile and wave at people. There wasn't really any, I guess, like engagement with the customers coming through. And honestly, it wasn't anything super major. I was just like, here's a bit of a script you can maybe use, maybe change some of your things, like stand up and be more engaging. Hey, have you heard of Revol? Just like simple, small tips. And like literally instantly went from $250, $300 per show to like $1,000+ per show or per market. And it was like, just honestly, just such small little things about it. And for her, like, I guess what she really got out of it was the idea that it's okay to sell. Like being a maker and being a creator, your products or your creations are so tied to you personally. I've never done that. I've just always been responsible for marketing or selling it. And obviously I see what I value is like a high performance, high quality, high like a product that's able to solve a big problem. And I love that. And then for me, my job is always just bringing the customers and meeting them with the product. With that situation, it was just, hey, like this is how we can meet the two and ask qualifying questions and then find solutions for the people that are in front of us. And yeah, that was small changes. And then honestly, it just kind of went from there.
And it's funny hearing that because I can definitely relate in that there are, I think, a lot of people out there that see sales as like a very dirty concept. They don't want someone selling things to them. They don't want to be selling things to other people, but
absolutely,
there is so much value, especially you go to an in-person event like that. If someone is a little bit more forthcoming, they're a little bit more forward about introducing themselves and they have a product that's going to make your life infinitely better.
Yeah,
that's doing you a huge service. If they go out of their way and they interrupt you for 5 seconds to tell you about their product.
Yeah, exactly. And just to your point, like there's so many things out there that people sell and it's honestly just garbage, but there's also really high quality and good products for people that help people and change people's lives. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with just making people aware of that, right? Because that's all sales really is. It's a process of making people aware of products in general.
Well, let's talk a little more about these in-person events. So nowadays, how do the two of you go about, let's just say, finding good in-person events that you can go to? Are there certain websites that you're looking for online? Are there certain Google searches you're regularly doing? I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah. So we've grown up quite a bit since those days. So in 2017, 2018, 2019, those were the days where we really were focused on finding more in-person events. We were trying to find more like trade shows, trying to find more farmers markets. And honestly, it's just Google, like just Googling the city, farmers markets, trade shows, like maker shows, things like that. That was really how we found a lot of the shows that we ended up going to. And in the early days, it was as many as possible and just load up our van that we had and just drive all over the place and sling as many pancakes as we could.
I like to think that there are going to be some listeners that just hear that soundbite and then are trying to figure out what is the rest of this episode all about.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's amazing. So let's talk about that a little more. So early days, it was all about how can we go to as many of these events as possible, drive to and from. Obviously, as the business scales, maybe it's not sustainable to have really the two heads of the company going to all of these in-person events. You probably have to get a little bit more selective. So what are some of the things that maybe indicate to you ahead of time that this could be a really good event for us to go to? This one, maybe not so much. Let's put that one on the back burner.
Yeah. For me, I think I was mostly responsible for finding some of the shows that we went to. From a sales background, my whole thing is about just what are the numbers. And there are some really small shows that could be good, but most of the time for me, it was, are we going to be able to see enough traffic coming through this show? Because if there's not enough people, then there's not enough opportunities to, kind of go through the pitch and so on and so forth. But are there enough people through the show? Also, does it look organized? Does it look like there's a good setup? Is it, honestly, for me, it was also like, does it kind of look aesthetic as well, like on the website that I'm looking at? And does it match the other shows that we've gone to? The reason why, because like, if it's organized and it looks like they put some effort into it, it's likely that they themselves have a database that they're going to be able to advertise to people, hey, the show's happening, and they're going to drive some traffic, drive people to the show. Although we kind of going to these different cities and whatever, we kind of were able to start building up a bit of an email list to let people know that we were going to be at a certain show. But it was more about like new customer acquisition. And so finding these shows, I guess like we're kind of convinced that that would drive enough traffic. Just were definitely a lot more like enticing or more interesting to us, because that just meant that there's more opportunities for us to talk about our product and talk about what the undies can do for people.
Well, yeah. And I mean, to your point, it's great if you can generate 50 sales, 100 sales. But if there are people that already knew about your product, that love your product, that are on your email list, that follow you on social media, that's a very different 50 sales coming out of that event.
Yeah, exactly.
Very cool.
Struggling to get new customers? We're here to help. Hey, this is Pat, the host of Customer Growth Sessions. Our agency, Intergrowth, has been helping e-commerce brands like Bella Bridesmaids, Brevity, and JS Dental to get more customers online since 2016. Interested in seeing how we'd help you? Head over to intergrowth.com/CGS to book a complimentary consultation with me. That's intergrowth.com/CGS. All right, back to the show.
Within that, what are your views on booth setup? Are there certain almost styling elements that you found are more effective for the brand? Do you prefer to go a little bit more bare bones? What drives the best results for you?
I guess in the early days, what we really realized was because it was such a taboo sort of, like it's periods, right? People weren't really talking about that in 2018, 2019. Like it still felt weird. Although like right now there's a lot more information about it. They're like, it's on social media and all that. Like it's more of a topic that comes up more frequently. Back then it really wasn't. And so having something that actually puts the product in front of the booth in line with the aisle was really interesting and was really different. A lot of the other vendors that you would find at the show, they would have these open booths where people would have to walk into them. And so for us, we initially set up our booth a lot of times as like, they come into the booth, but it wasn't really pulling people in because it's kind of like this weird thing, right? Like that, what we ended up finding out was like having it kind of in front right by the aisle made it a lot easier for people to just kind of stop where they're already walking. They're not really changing their path, ask about the product or whatever. And then that honestly created a bit more drive to our booth because one or two people stopped in front of the booth already made our whole section look more busy. Whereas like one or two people in a booth when you're walking down the aisle doesn't look that busy, right? So that was like one of the things that we really identified and would change as far as like creating more interest and creating more intrigue about what we were doing there.
Let's say for this typical event, and maybe your views have changed on this over time, but let's say you're going to an event that starts at 10 a.m. and it's going to go on for a couple of hours. How early do you find yourself typically getting there? Is it showing up an hour beforehand? Is it showing up 2 hours beforehand? What gives you the right amount of time to set up the booth properly, get settled, and really be ready for the first people coming in?
Yeah, usually in those kind of level of shows, just as early as they would let you. The first day to actually like set up the show itself or set up the booth itself, you just need as much time as possible, making sure that everything's actually like set up in the right spot, that the undies are lint rolled and all that and stuff. But the rest of the days, like, cause sometimes like a trade show or a market would be 2 or 3 days, right? It'd be Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So the Friday is like the early show up, but then really the Saturday and Sunday, it's whatever, half an hour before, 45 minutes before the show starts, just to make sure things are organized. So I like on a personal level was like, okay, there's a real need for this. And so we kind of just like joined forces in the early days and did a bunch of shows together. That was 2017, 2018. We were kind of puttering along, and like late 2018, I'm originally from the UK. So I was switching things. I had graduated and I was switching things over to my work visa, and there was some confusion. So I lost my visa and I couldn't work. So I spent most of my time actually just hanging out with her, like while we were dealing with all the visa stuff, and got deeper into the company, and then led into 2019 where we were both like, we're both passionate about this. I'm spending a lot of time doing this already. So let's just like dive head in and go full on. So that was the year that we were like, we're going to aim for like in 2018, we did like $25,000 or something like that. We're going to go for $100,000. Neither of us have ever made $100,000 in our life, but we were just like $100,000 was like the goal. We bought this blue van, like a minivan. We built like a booth in the back, picked shows all over the place, Calgary, Ontario, then the States, California, and on Oregon and Washington, and just drove our van like all over the place, just slinging panties out of the back of the van, essentially. And so from there, and I like to point out, we set a goal of $100,000. We actually did $162,000 that year, which was like pretty awesome for us. And I think, again, it just comes like, for me, it just really came back to like the numbers game behind it. It was just like talk to more people, meet more people, and then there's going to be more opportunities for us to find the folks who need our product. So that was 2019. And then obviously 2020 came around and we're still doing a similar thing. Now we have one or two employees at that point. We're doing some more like admin stuff, doing some manufacturing, and COVID hits. And the only thing that I think really saved us was while we were doing all these markets and trade shows, we would always collect emails. So we would always run these little like giveaways of like enter to giveaway. All you have to do is put your email, your phone number, that kind of thing. And COVID hit, like all the shows shut down, obviously, like nobody was doing anything in person. And so we took, I think it was like 1 week. We just spent like all of our time up, like making sure that our website at least like looked good, and essentially just sent an email out to, I think it was like 9 or 10,000 people who were just like, hey, we're an online business now. So like you can buy our undies online, and just kind of went from there. That I heard about like there's this thing called Facebook ads. So then I just dived into that and essentially just taught myself how to run Facebook ads and Google ads. And then now like TikTok and Pinterest and all the rest of it. But yeah, that was really like the early days with that. And we just kind of took each year as it came, moved our manufacturing overseas in 2022. And then 2023, we launched into retail for the first time, grew that pretty rapidly with honestly the exact same structure as we did with the in-person market. We were just like, if that worked, then going to as many wholesale trade shows as we can in 1 year. And because we did that, we literally went from 0 to 1,900 doors within 12 months. Like it was very, very rapid. And then, yeah, that was a couple of years ago. And from there, we've just continued to double down on efficiencies and grow the business.
One of the things I'm really curious about, you mentioned the idea of Facebook ads being a huge revenue driver, like right as COVID was coming into play. I'm very curious because periods are, I think some people would describe it as like a taboo subject. It's something not everyone feels comfortable talking about, especially people who didn't grow up with like sisters or moms. That's maybe not a topic that they've ever discussed with someone. I would imagine there's a certain percentage of people that see your ads that are like, for one reason or another, are just kind of uncomfortable with it. They're off put by it. Either they're females that don't want that out in the public, or they're men that just don't feel comfortable seeing that. How do you approach marketing what some people see as a taboo subject?
Yeah. In 2020, when I really was diving deep into Facebook and trying to understand how to run ads on Instagram and Facebook itself, our ads would constantly get denied. They would constantly get flagged. But for me, it was like, how do you sell period underwear without putting it on a body? You know what I mean? How else do you talk about that? Just like showing the images, right? So initially, we really had to get really creative with the cropping of the images and all that kind of stuff. And we would still get a bunch of comments, just to your point, of people being like, I can't believe like you're talking about just like really weird things. And for us, like, I don't know that we really cared too much at the beginning, because like right off the bat, I'm a guy in a period underwear company, right? Like that already was such a weird, when we were doing the in-person market, me being a guy there being like, hey, like, do you want to like try period on these? We would be like, what? It was a really weird experience for a lot of people. But then there's the other side of it, really, that I want people to know. There's people uncomfortable about it, but then there was also people like who were super thankful about the fact that we were making in a conversation that people were talking about, that I was involved in it. I once had this older lady, not older, like I would say like 60. I guess like that's not really that old, but she comes up to me and she was just like, I've been standing over there, like watching you guys, and I'm just like so in shock or whatever it was that she was saying. And she's like, I'm so thankful that you're here, like talking to people and being so comfortable. And we had a 2 or 3 minute conversation about it all. And at the end of it, she was like tearing up. And she was like, I've literally never talked to any guy about my period not even my husband, not my dad. And like, I was like the first person, and she's like 60 years old, right? So that was like her experience, and a lot of other people, same thing as well. But for us, it was like, if there's that experience, then what we're doing is absolutely necessary. We can't stop, right? It's like, we have to break down the taboos like that. That's like a really big mission of ours. And we have to provide products that are better for people.
And I think that one of the things that cracks me up about it, you mentioned there are some people that are responding to these ads that are leaving like nasty comments. It cracks me up thinking that like these people have no idea that those nasty comments, rude as they may be, are just helping your ads to perform better, get in front of more people, and cost less money per click. That's why.
Absolutely. Like sometimes, yeah, Facebook has gone through its ups and downs. There was that ISO update thing and all of that, but like every comment, a lot of people don't realize that like every comment helps to actually make ads more efficient for us. And so I like our brand being a bit more like cheeky. We talk about like at these pharmacy trade shows that we do, or grocery wholesale trade shows that we do. We literally have t-shirts that are like, that say touch our panties. And I'm like, those are the kinds of things. That's the kind of way that I want our brand to show up. And same thing online. So I know it's not like always the hottest take for people, but I'll sometimes I'd respond pretty like directly to people, like with their comments or whatever. It just kind of helps. Like they respond and I respond, and it just like ends up being this like 10 comment chain of just showing people how like they should think differently, or how we're not going to change, like just because somebody is telling us like we shouldn't do something. And it ends up being this whole conversation. And I'm like, you literally only made this ad better by doing that. And for me, I'm just like, I'm just chuckling internally. But for them, obviously, it's like this whole thing. And I'm like, whatever, it doesn't matter. So yeah, that's definitely like one thing to remember. For even negative comments are a good thing sometimes.
And I know you've mentioned that a lot of your ads have taken on like an educational angle. Are there ever internal discussions where, you and the team will think about it and say, this might be making people a little too uncomfortable, almost saying like, this is the line that we don't want to cross within either our ads or educational content? Or do you just kind of say like, screw the line, let's just put everything out there?
Yeah, I don't think that there's really I think the line is just being a decent person. Like our responses or comments, or the way that we show up isn't like, I would say like, there's not really a line. It's just more about like, are you being rude, or are you being like a good person? And then if that's like, if we're feeling like we're teetering on that, then it's not the kind of comments or content that we put out there. But I don't care about whether or not someone thinks a man should or not be talking about periods. I don't care whether or not someone is like uncomfortable with us talking about like women, but also people with periods, because they come in all shapes, sizes, and genders, right? So like for me, that's how we show up, and that's the representation that we want to put forward. But I'm also the type of person that's like, I'm gonna, and in the nicest way possible, put someone in their place if they're just wrong about something. For example, sometimes there's been all these issues with chemicals and things like that in period underwear called PFAS. Like that was a big thing recently. It's showing up a lot in the beauty industry, but a lot of the largest competitors have been sued for having these things in their products. Obviously, because we build our undies from the ground up, we know what's in there. We know that they don't have any of that, but people will put comments and being like, oh, these undies have PFAS in it, like that, where they don't. So it's like, it takes 2 seconds to do some research and see how we like represented our brand and the testing and things like that we do. So I'll just set people straight and just like, no, you're wrong. This is it. And this, we're FDA registered. We're Prop 65 compliant, and this is better for you. Like that kind of thing. So it's pretty direct, but I know some other people don't necessarily like being that direct and that forward. And I think like we like to put our brand, or have our brand show up the way that we personally show up as well. Sarah and I are both just like that, very direct and like, kind of to the point, nice, but it's not about, we're trying to play around how people feel, especially when they're wrong in that kind of situation. So,
and on top of that as well, I mean, if it's a case where someone's leaving comments that misrepresent your brand, Yeah, I mean, if you decide, hey, we're going to try and play it safe, well, the good side, I guess, is maybe you don't make an enemy personally. The downside is your brand looks bad. But if you call someone out respectfully and you say, hey, that's just not true, maybe you look like a slight asshole in some people's eyes, but you protect the brand. You're more honest about the way that the brand actually is presented and the actual product itself. So I'm totally with you there.
Yeah. And honestly, like, I think because we show up that way, we also put ourselves on some ads where it's me talking about the period underwear or period, Sarah talking about it. And honestly, like some of our responses are the highest liked comments within like under our ads. So that just only shows to me that, or just tells me that people do want us to show up more, or brands to show up more authentically, brands to show up more like honest and not in like a customer service kind of like way, but just like if your best friend who's like not going to be an asshole, but also going to be direct. So that's how we sell it. So yeah.
With that, any closing thoughts, maybe for other founders out there that are selling any sort of products that some people might see as taboo? Any guidance you could offer to help them to be a little more comfortable putting their name out there, putting their product out there?
I would honestly say, like, I think it's what's really important isn't trying to be comfortable with it, is really like setting your or settling within yourself. Like, what are my core values and what are the things that I want my brand to represent? And those things are unchanging, right? So it's like, those things are outside of like how anyone thinks about you or how anyone, what other people's beliefs are. And so really establishing like a strong, I guess, understanding of who you are and or what your brand is and how you want your brand to show up. I think that's really important, because understanding that, then it's very clear, like, do we respond this way or do we not respond this way? And that shouldn't really matter whether or not someone thinks like your protein powder works or not. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, if you know that you've done research, you know that you've done this, you want to, whatever, have certain impact with your product, that doesn't change outside of other people's opinions. So I think it's just what I would say. It's more of an internal work thing than anything like necessarily practical, like do this or do that.
I love it. Mayo, this has been great today. For the listeners that either want to learn more about you, connect with Sarah, or just want to learn more about Revol, where should they go to get in touch with you guys or actually even order your products?
Yeah. So revolcares.com is our website. You can find everything on there, all of our different styles. You can also find us in store as well. If you're in North America, in Canada, it's essentially everywhere, like Pharmacy, Save On Foods, Walmart's, all that kind of stuff. And then in the States, it's your drugstores and stuff like that. So,
well, once again, listeners, this is Mayo Santos, the CRO and co-founder over at Revol Cares. Mayo, thanks for coming on today.
Thanks so much, Pat.
Thanks for tuning in to Customer Growth Sessions. If you found it helpful, subscribe and give us a review. It helps us to grow the show. Looking for more SEO guidance on how to grow your business? Contact us at intergrowth.com/estimator or email me directly. You can reach me at pat@intergrowth.com. That's all for today. We'll see you again soon.